to have the conversations that impact organizations and to deconstruct the issues. In this way, companies can better understand the problems, where they stand, and how we can help. Each month, on the last Wednesday, we dive into defining an aspect of allyship and diversity. Tune in as a team and make it part of your monthly staff meeting. Now for the show. Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to episode 3 of Unlearning Labels podcast. Tonight, I'm here with Peter Griffiths and Mira Griffiths, and we'll be speaking about hate speech in the global workplace. You want to kick us off, Peter?
Yeah, I really want to just share, this is the European Council Committee's view on what hate speech is. I thought I would read this out because I thought it was quite interesting. And it was quite a clear explanation of what it consists of, because some people are like, what is that, It says all forms of expression which spread, incite, promote or justify racial hatred, xenophobia, anti-Semitism, or forms of hatred based on intolerance, including intolerance expressed by aggressive nationalism and ethnoism and discrimination. So what does that actually mean? Should we unpack that?
I think that's a great place to start. Mira?
Yeah, and I could probably go with the personal experience, I guess, here, because probably not the only one, probably everybody experienced it in some way, one way or another. But just this morning, I was looking at the Facebook feed of what is happening in Croatia at the moment. And so Croatia and Serbia were in a war. Actually, Serbian people living in Croatia and Croatian people were in the war, and then it escalated even more, and let's not go there. But so it's been, 25 years since? And I'm looking at these posts, and because government wants to get people to start being more inclusive. So in some areas where Serbs are minority in Croatia, where they live, they have put the signs in Cyrillic as well. So it's double lettering. And so, and then people have started complaining about it. There was lots of hate speech online. There was, what did we fight for? What is this? Go there and destroy it. Nobody's going to impose this on us. Who do you think we are? So I think, and then that affects everybody else living in the area, people going to work over there. And what I think should happen is government really addressing this. As if you're looking at this as a company, when there is certain situations like this happening within the company, you need to address it. You can't be quiet, because I do understand why people are feeling the way they feel, but it comes from misunderstanding. It looks personal to them. So it really needs to be addressed and deconstructed in order for everyone to feel safe. People that are using hate speech, that they feel threatened as well, I think. And this is the reason why they do it. Some part of them feels threatened. And then they're being violent towards others. So if it's not addressed, it just becomes a really toxic situation where However, these conversations are uncomfortable. And because they're uncomfortable, people don't really like to go there. So they'll go, if we leave it, it will pass. But it's been 25 years for this particular situation and hasn't passed. So, if in company somebody doesn't talk about it, it's not addressed, things are not talked over, understood, it can go up to 25 years unless company disappears because of it in the future. So I don't know, it just my take, just as an intro. I don't know. I hope I wasn't too far.
No, I love the way you presented it. And there's like two things that come up for me. First of all, with current events, right? So you said it's affecting people that are going to work, right? So when they get to work, they've got this like emotional baggage, right? Mm-hmm. So as an organization, what are you doing about that? Are you welcoming in your employees, recognizing the like not just the political state of the company, but like of the country, but like the actual commute of your employees to work, right? What are you doing to allay their fears and discomfort so that they can do their job and be present? And then the second thing that, comes up for me as I'm listening to you, definitely, if this was just a company, yeah, that company would not exist. Because like 25 years, seriously, no. It would, like, the company would vanish.
What I'm hearing?
Yeah.
What I'm hearing? It seems like a lot of this can be, the root cause of it could be coming from fear, right? And again, I'm just for people watching or listening, I'm not condoning any of this at all, because usually when someone is targeted, they're completely caught and destabilized and caught off guard, right? It happens and you feel super uncomfortable, and then it has an impact on that person, which is detrimental, right? But I don't know, it just sounded from the example Mira gave, there's a lot of there's a lack of awareness, there's a lot of fear. And again, the fear, I'm guessing here, can come from the media, from other colleagues, from social media, which can be very divisive, right? So it sounds to me like to really chip away at this is to really just allow a safe space in your workplace, in your community, where it's okay to talk about it, because it is uncomfortable. And I have to concede, until I understand the particular situation or the challenge, yeah, you are a little bit uncomfortable because you don't have all the information at hand. But that's okay too, because if you're curious and you're willing to listen, because you don't fully understand the situation, therefore you're going to be gifted with new information, and you're less likely to be fearful, because surely fear stems from disinformation, and as I said, doesn't it stem from a lack of information as well?
It can also stem from just triggering events, right? So like for some people, like you were saying there, with the double lettering on the signs, just maybe seeing the Cyrillic letters may be triggering for people, especially if maybe they were going to work the day that the Civil War started 25 years ago. It may like bring stuff up for them, right? And like they have this unresolved trauma that they're dealing with, So I'm really glad that we're starting off talking about current events and how that hate speech can show up in the global workplace. It's either like something that's within a person that may be bubbling up, or it may just be the result of current events. So like right now in the United States, last May, George Floyd was killed by 4 police officers. Well, guess what? The trials are happening right now. And so that, again, that's a triggering event. There are a lot of people that still haven't overcome that trauma. And now they're broadcasting the trial. And I don't know how they're going to do this. It appears that they're doing one officer at a time. There were 4 officers, right? And some of the witnesses were kids, as it turns out. So they had a teenage girl and a child on the witness stand yesterday. And so just people watching that, it's like, again, same thing, right? It's like, to Peter's point, this is more of like a social media or media in general influence. And so their commute to work, right now, a lot of us are on Zoom. Some people are actually going into the office. They have that weight on their mind, and they may go back to 10 months ago. Where were they when this happened, And so what are companies doing to, like a year later, to help employees? I know back then it was all the craze to like have those conversations, but like, is that really necessary? It's almost like rehashing, reliving, and, resparking that fear and anger instead of. I was in an interesting event last night where we were invited to lovingly witness each other's experience. So what if organizations offered something like this?
It's interesting because it looks to me that, when we start the fear of where there is some kind of echo. Can you hear it?
Not anymore, because that was my fault.
Okay. It was. So what happens is that when people are triggered, it's usually because I can't be myself, and I'm being oppressed here. So whether you are the one that hates or the one that is being hated, you're in the same position. So you're being oppressed. You're not allowed to be. You think you are not allowed to be who you are. And because something like this is either triggered or you've grown up with that belief. So what happened with this sign that I mentioned, and it could be, events that are happening in America right now, it's put over there, but nobody was prepared for it. So nobody was explained what it is, what it means. It doesn't mean that you won't have a voice anymore. It doesn't mean that things will happen again. It doesn't mean, and I think there is this, I think organizations often go into change projects and making changes at work, especially when big events like this happen, for example, in America, without explanation. And leaders need to be prepared for it. When you're rolling stuff out, whatever that is, especially with these very personal, very emotional, we are bringing ourselves full to work. Yes, it's work, but you still have your emotions. You're not separated from it. That needs to be addressed. And I'm not sure that this is something that it's really talked or taught through. I don't know, Peter, what do you think?
Quite often not, but as you say, a lot of these things, they happen because this is what happens, right? In reality, life happens, and then there's an event, and it can be triggering, it can be really traumatic for people, and then there's other people not really understanding what's going on. So I kind of get it, and again, I'm not making, I'm not sided with one side or the other, but I think organizations then get uncomfortable because they're like, well, damned if I do, damned if I don't. If I talk about this, we might get attacked and all of this. But we have to be bold, and all leaders need to be equipped with the right skills how to communicate. And it's okay if you get it wrong for people listening and watching, right? Because I had to do this, it just made sense because at the time, the leadership team above me in a previous role, they weren't really saying much. So what I used to do was just ask my team. I would always take the pulse and their temperature check and just say, look, some crazy stuff's happened. How are you feeling? And again, because I knew my people pretty well, right? I would then decide if I could see that people were affected by it, or I had a good guess that people are uncomfortable or maybe wanted to vent or talk about it. I would just make sure I set aside time to do that. And then, it's like letting out a vent. It's like allowing people to blow off a bit of steam. Because if you don't talk about these things, these world events, and let's be honest, they're happening every day, right? And I'd hazard a guess with the multicultural setup across the world that in most organizations of certain scale, there'll be at least one or two people impacted, wherever you are. I'd be really surprised if there wasn't, right? So the best thing you can do is just have that space, but also don't, as you pointed to, Cordelia, don't really ram it down people's throats, because why would you want to relive traumatic events? So it's just being mindful that some people might want to talk about it, but the context of your weekly update on a Monday might not be the best setting. So it's really knowing your people and understanding, the people in your team who really are emotional and they're connected with the more human side and want to talk about it, and then just setting aside time as soon as it's possible without detracting from what you're doing, right?
Yeah, Peter. So I want to take a moment and just welcome some people into the room. We have Rahma, who has joined us on Facebook, and it looks like Abnash is on LinkedIn. So we're just going to reset, and then I will present Rahma's question for us. So this is the Unlearning Labels podcast. We go live the last Wednesday of every month. And today we're speaking about hate speech in the global workplace. And so our podcast is really about deconstructing the issues in our language behind what actually causes our behavior and our choices. So, and so far we've talked about two current events that are very present for people in Europe. There's things going on in Croatia that may be triggering from the civil war between Croatia and Serbia 25 years ago. And then in the United States, we're now having the trials related to the George Floyd killing last year. So Rahma's question is, what methods can we use to avoid being triggered? And she adds on to that, especially when we have had negative experiences. So, as we're talking about having these conversations in the workplace and trying to create psychological safety for our employees, what are some suggestions or recommendations? Let's start with you, Mira. You're both mindset coaches and you work with leaders. So
it's interesting, though. I mean, I had to learn a lot myself in order to stop being triggered, and I still am triggered. I still get, when I saw what I saw this morning, I felt, I started feeling angry, and why is this happening again, and all of that. But it's really understanding what is going on, what was going on. We kind of need to go through a way of healing that space in a way, but it doesn't have to be, you don't have to do that for 10 years of time and then be okay. It is really being aware of what is going on internally for you, so you do not project that on others. So if I felt feelings of anger for whatever was happening today, I could have went on Facebook and started ranting out about it and saying everybody how crazy they are. Are they going to make it the same thing again? But I was conscious enough to knowing that that's my feelings right now at the moment. I don't have to act on them. So triggers, will be happening. We're humans. We have thoughts, memories. They get triggered. We get the same emotion out. But it's the awareness that allows you to notice that emotion and then not act on it. But what gets you there is really understanding where you are now, what was the past, what can you learn from it, and that's
the average person isn't really that emotionally evolved, though. So, what kind of workshops could an organization offer to get people to that space?
Well, again, we touched on it, right? It's about raising awareness around the fact that, psychologically you will be triggered, because let's be honest, most of these things happen, it's by surprise. Someone's ambushed with a horrible comment, or why do you act like this, or why do you dress like this? And it will trigger you, but that's okay. And if you're, for example, if it's a situation where you've got a bit more autonomy, so something's happened in the news and you're not feeling great going into work, then that's obviously a bit easier. So companies just need to train leaders on noticing the changes in people, because sometimes it can be quite subtle. But again, it's knowing your people. If you're listening to the pulse of your people by checking in on them and create, as you pointed to before, Cordelia, creating a psychologically safe space where people do feel included and they feel like you've got the back and you're checking in, then you're more likely to notice then if someone's mood just suddenly changes. Or might seem obvious, but if you really know someone in your team and suddenly, usually they're happy-go-lucky, but then they've suddenly become lethargic and down, then that's probably a good indicator that something's off. So it's really training leaders in those basics of psychology and becoming better coaches. So when they spot stuff, they can do, take action and give feedback in a really non-threatening and more meaningful way. Because the last thing you want is, if you're already feeling down, you've already been triggered by events on the way into work on your commute, and then suddenly your boss says, right, I want to speak to you in this room now because you seem to be acting weird. It's not probably going to bode well for the rest of the day, right? So yeah.
What do you think, Cordelia?
Well, the thing that I am also present to is, like, let's say you create this space, right? And but there's maybe one employee, right, that buys into whatever the rhetoric that's being spread, right? And they're just jabbing this person, right? But that person isn't someone who's going to speak up about it, but they're suddenly, going back to Peter's point, right? They're suddenly ill. They're suddenly missing work, but what happens to the instigator? Like, how do we catch the instigator who is pulling down the morale at work? How do we catch that?
It's I would say it's interesting, and this is why we need to be comfortable going in uncomfortable conversations, but without triggering the instigator. So you need to be really comfortable doing that, because if you're not, you're going to get triggered yourself, and then it can end up being a problem. Yeah. And it's and so going back to what kind of workshops or what companies can do for people is probably teaching them listening skills, but not listening skills to reply, not listening skills that we, active listening. It's not that. It's really being present with people and being present with the emotions that are coming up with them. And, it's just really the communication in a much deeper level. So that could be one of the things. And it's interesting, though, it doesn't have to take a long time, because what we've experienced when people are engaged in these spaces, in these conversations, where people talk about stuff within the group, it happens really quickly. Really.
Yeah.
It's interesting what you talked about there, because I find that most leaders are uncomfortable in certain contexts, as we all are, right? Me too. But it's just, again, you have to go there first. So it's really about working on yourself. So organizations that allow that time for leaders to learn about themselves, how they're triggered, how their emotions are, and how they can keep themselves in check, that will put you in good stead when you're looking after a team. And if they're trained in facilitation, then they can hold that safe space. So if a team meeting starts to get heated, or someone's really put the foot in it and said something offensive, they'll know what to do, rather than either making it worse by, innocently stoking the fire, or worse still, by actually just being muted, and then everyone being confused because they don't know why their leaders suddenly just left. And that usually the two things that happen. Usually people innocently try to fix it and it gets worse because they're trying to fix it. And the second bit is when they just don't act at all because they're also frozen in fear and really super uncomfortable because they don't really have the tools or the language to use, right?
Yeah. I also want to just welcome in Brian. Thank you for joining us. And for those of you who are viewing and listening, please feel free to put your questions. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So, and there's 3 of us, so we're manning all. So we will get to your questions. You know, I realized, Mira, I didn't answer your question. We are actually... we are putting together a workshop, aren't we? Right. And so we are offering an opportunity for leaders to have actionable tools to use and implement in their organization. And I'm just thinking that I'm my heart and my mind has really been affected by this event I attended last night. And one of the activities we got to do was to lovingly witness someone else's experience, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever it was that they had been experiencing. And the great thing about it, it was like you said, Mira, so much deeper than just active listening, because at the end of it, we were just appreciating the opportunity to witness that person's experience. And that was it. We weren't like giving feedback. That wasn't the game. So when your intention is to just like fully witness somebody, like it's a whole different dynamic. I felt different. And so, you know, to your point, Peter, this would be a great exercise to start out with leaders, right? Just having leaders do something like this and practice on their leadership teams. And so, I would just like to take this opportunity to invite anyone who's listening and you're trying to understand what can I do to make the communication in our organization better, you know, to join our event on June 1st. So.
It's interesting, though. It was something that I wanted to say, and you just said it. I just wanted to kind of take another spin to it. The reason why people feel threatened and why they hate other people that are different from them or different race or they're from different country, they're a minority, or, you know, all of that is because it feels like something is taken away from them. It's like these people are here now, like, for example, what's happening with refugees. These people are here now and they're going to take away what's ours. So in order not to feel that, we try to make them same as us. And there was an article that you shared recently, and it was about the importance of having multicultural environment. And that's all about diversity. Companies that really embrace diversity, they really thrive. So you really need to allow people to be themselves. And this is where it comes to witnessing another person for who they are. And you don't feel threatened anymore when you're allowed to be who you are, when people know who you are and they're okay with that. Hatred stops. You know, I was joking a lot with a friend of mine who is Arabic, and she said it's really interesting though. She said people don't like you until they get to meet you, and suddenly even the person that didn't like Arabs, for example, suddenly Arabic isn't equal to you. They start recognizing you as a person that is minus the label that they had attached before. So it's really important to really do that. Yeah.
You know what, that's just reminded me that the only label, once you have that understanding, you've had that human connection with someone that's different from you as human, right? And then that label, as you say, of Arab or whatever they're from, doesn't make sense anymore, you know, not in that context, right?
Yeah.
Remember that story, Cordelia and Mira, we were talking about? We both seen this guy. I can't remember his name, Cordelia. You might remember the guy that started to get curious about clan members, and
Oh, yeah,
he
yeah,
went
yeah.
to Ku Klux Klan members. Really bold move as well, because he thought, well, they're just like me and you. However, they're just a bit lost at sea. You know, they have this agenda that it just doesn't add up. I need to dig deeper. I'm curious. And this curiosity led to him to connect with people that were totally different, who, dare I say, at one point wanted to kill this gentleman. And then he totally turned it around. And a few of them ended up being friends, you know, which was
Yeah.
totally transformational.
If somebody wants to look him up, and what he's done is Daryl Davis.
Harold Davis. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Is there any more questions?
I don't see any more
Okay.
questions. Rahma did also offer, it can be hard to be transparent. So, yeah, and being, curious, I think it takes a willingness to get there, right? You have to be willing to be curious. And it goes back to self-awareness. It's like a loop, right? Like you can't get away from the self-awareness bit.
But once you crack the loop, you don't have to learn everything separately. It all comes together. Once we understand what is going on, that's it.
Well, you don't have to think about it. I mean, if you were curious, which we all, just for people watching and listening, we are all innately curious, whether you believe that or not. I know that everyone says, "Oh, well, I was when I was a child, but I got the life sucked out of me, in adulthood." But I actually haven't seen any human that's got a heartbeat that isn't curious, right? And one other thing that I was thinking about while you were both talking is that if you want to improve diversity and create more safe spaces and have better human connections in the workplace, the best place to look is something called cognitive diversity. That sounds really complicated and psychological, but it just means that, as you both pointed to, it just means listening to understand. Because when you have this rich diversity of different opinions, you can't not throw in the culture and the rich melting pot of everyone's history and all of the things that uniquely makes them themselves. But you don't have to focus on how do I embrace these people into my team, if that makes sense, just because they're different. Because it's a lot easier if you're just listening to everyone anyway, by default, right? I think as humans, we love to make things look quite complex, right? And again, I'm not saying these things aren't challenging, because we have to chip away at these challenges daily, weekly, monthly. It's an ever-going thing, right? We have to keep going with it in organizations. This isn't something where we'll address it in a week and train your managers up and it goes away, right?
And it's, even if we actually spend a week, but that's not even that. It's like 2 hours workshop, so it needs to be instilled.
As you were speaking, Rahma, she actually has put in quite a few comments, but this one kind of sums it up. We all have good intentions, but there's a lot of discrimination. Some of her other comments are, I understand, but bullying does exist, and there's a limit to how much, people can take. So,
that's all real. That's why we're talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very real. So tell me.
No, I'm just saying. So if people have experienced it, because I have, and I've also, as a leader in some organizations, unfortunately, I did see it more often than I would like. So what are the tangible steps? And most organizations, or hopefully they will have this, that the HR function, your line manager, but even if you're not comfortable speaking to your manager, reach out to any employee, and just the minute you share that load, you'll be absolutely amazed at how people will step up. It doesn't even have to be someone, that's even classified as a leader. It could even be another employee. And most companies will have, stringent steps in place where if someone experiences bullying in the workplace, or the mates feel uncomfortable and they don't know what to do next, then, the first place they'll point you to is the compliance policies and stuff like this. But even before it gets there, You see, for me, the big shame in organizations is that most of these things can be resolved before they ever get to that level, right? And the sad thing for me is that I dealt with them when it was too late, because someone had already made a meal of it and started talking about company policies and all of that without actually even listening to the person that was impacted in the first place. So the first place to start is that the more that we're listening to each other, and if we hear that someone's been put in a really uncomfortable position and it's really caused them some, anguish and pain, and that maybe they've gone sick or they just don't want to come back to work, then the first thing we can do is actually listen to what they want. It's about empowerment, right? What would you like to happen? I'm listening to you. I hear you. What tangible steps would you like me to take, for the company? And what can we do to make this right? And in most of the time, listening is actually the best place, Doesn't require escalation and lawyers and all of this, right?
It doesn't. And you made it superhuman there, because what you're talking about is the opportunity of allyship that we all have, like with our colleagues. It doesn't even have to escalate to HR. If you have a colleague that you share your story with, the listener has an opportunity to use their privilege to be an ally for you, to stop that bully in its tracks, and this is where it takes courageous self-leadership to do that. It's a really small step for one person, but at the same time, it's really for everybody, because the minute you stand up to that bully who is just affecting the one person, the bully will think again before they, go after somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it is real, and it's happening, and we are all humans. And what's interesting though, I caught myself in the past thinking some not very nice thoughts about people, and it's not easy to say that, because I think I'm evolved, and I'm a psychologist, and I've done this and I've done that, and I've been through terrible experiences. But we are all judgmental. We all have biases. So it's easier to understand each other as from different backgrounds and different experiences, when we know that we are all kind of susceptible to do the same, even if we wouldn't really think like that about ourselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we
does,
just see the mirror of ourselves in the other person. That's what you're saying. Again, keeping it superhuman. So really, it looks like the answer to addressing hate speech is being superhuman, like not superhuman, just being human. And seeing
just being you.
Just being you, and seeing the reflection of your humanity in the person in front of you. And yeah, in a perfect world, that will stop things in its tracks. And then I guess the next step would be taking on and recognizing your own privilege to be an ally, and standing up for your colleagues.
Yeah, I think lots of people don't get involved because they don't know if they should. They don't know if it's their place. They don't, they're not. And this is what we were talking about when it comes to why people are reluctant to help, especially if there is a big group around. And it's not because they're bad people, it's because they think, oh, maybe they're looking for others, what others are doing. And if you, as a victim of bullying, do not show that you need help, that you want help, people don't think that you need it. And so it's just human. It's and I think we all do that one way or another. So it's really important. And it's a big step for all of us, asking for help, asking for other people to get involved. It takes huge amount of vulnerability and courage to do that. And it's transformative. Like once you ask for help, if that's the problem, if that's something that you were not comfortable with. And that means for leaders, for companies, it changes your life. It can really change your life. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. I'm wondering what's percolating in Peter's brain.
I'm just enjoying this conversation. It's a rich one, so thank you both. And it goes all the way back to the start of the conversation, really. It's all about awareness. And the more that we talk about these topics, whether it's like this, in our communities, in the workplace, the easier it will get. You know, incremental steps. We're not saying that everything can be resolved overnight. Far from it. There are no silver bullets. But the good news is that the more you talk about these things and these challenges inside your company, whether it's at a level of your team, chatting, having a break with your colleague, or in the larger departments or the whole company itself, the easier it will get, because then people are aware, they're aware of things can go wrong, they're aware of their own unconscious biases, and they're fully aware of, remember we talked about this, the bystander effect, that there's the challenge of we're all empowered. So if something goes wrong, then you must, have the courage to step up and say that this is not right. I don't really tolerate this, because there should be a zero tolerance to any of this kind of behavior, right?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we are saying. We're not tolerating it, but we want to find out how to change it, and to find out how to solve the problem, you need to understand it.
But just before we wrap up, the last bit as well is that bystander effect. We all know it's really super uncomfortable. And if we're really honest with each other, we've all frozen at times and wished we've stepped up for someone in the past, whether it was, in the school with the schoolyard bully, to what, situations in our community or in public. But it's the most important thing that every employee should realize, that we all have to take a stand with that. And no matter how uncomfortable, if you see a colleague being targeted and you see that something needs to be done, then the first thing you can do is just have the back, and it doesn't matter what happens after that, because if you take that very first step, you'll be surprised other people will step up as well, because you're actually impacting others and you're allowing them to do the same.
Yeah, that's an opportunity to be a courageous leader, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I would like to thank all our viewers and listeners. This is also available on Anchor, or it will be in the next week. You can see past episodes and current episodes on our website, which is www.unlearninglabels.com. And join us tomorrow on Clubhouse, where we are every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8 p.m. Standard Time, whatever it's called, the new time, change time. So 2 p.m. For New York time, and it's 8 p.m. in Central European time. And so thank you so much. I really love this collaboration with you two, Peter and Mira, because you have such a richness and depth of experience, having worked in the Middle East and, now being basically immigrants, right? In Berlin. You're both immigrants now. And so this is just a really human conversation about the language, and choosing our language differently and changing our behavior. So
these are all challenges that we went through and dealt with. So I've been a immigrant since I was 12 years old.
Yeah, it's a humbling experience, right? To live in someone else's country and just see different perspectives. And I also understand that not everyone has the opportunity to do that, because even living in another country, unless you are forced to, is a privilege in itself. So that's why I always took those opportunities, and I thought, right, let's learn everything about where I am, culture, food, everything, And Cordelia, thank you for what you said, because I think we've learned a lot, all of us together, right? And it's been a rich conversation and dialogue so far, and I look forward to more episodes.
Absolutely. So, and thank you, Nadia and Rahma and Brian, and there may be, let's see who
Thank you.
else. I think that's Abnesh, for being here. And, if this has affected you, if you've benefited from this conversation, please do share with others and share, like maybe your organization struggles with this, share with the leaders at your organization. So thank you very much. And like I said, I invite you to join us tomorrow on Clubhouse, same time, but on Clubhouse. And have a great evening or afternoon wherever you are in the world.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.